You thought you had the worst roommate on the planet? Well, think again. My roommate brought drug dealers to our apartment, threatened to kill my cat, and turned my life into a living nightmare for 6 months. But what he didn't know was that I had been documenting everything, and I was about to make him pay in ways he never saw coming. By the time I was done with him, he didn't just move out, he fled the state. Keep watching to learn how I became my roommate's worst nightmare after he tried to wreck my life. I was 24, working 2 jobs to afford a decent apartment near downtown. When my previous roommate moved out, I posted on Craigslist looking for someone to split the $1,800 rent. That's when I met Nathan. Nathan seemed perfect during our coffee meeting. He was clean, well-spoken, and said he worked in tech sales. He had the first month's rent ready in cash and even offered to pay the security deposit. Damn! I should have known something was off when he seemed too eager to move in, but I was in a pickle at the moment, so I welcomed him with open arms. The first month was fine. Nathan kept to himself. He was generally clean and paid his share of utilities on time, but then things started changing. It started small. He'd leave dishes in the sink for weeks. When I'd clean them, he'd get angry and say I was acting like his mother. Then he started bringing people over at weird hours like 2 a.m. on Tuesday nights, and he also started having really loud late-night conversations in the living room while I was trying to sleep because I had work the next morning. When I asked him to keep it down, he told me to buy earplugs or move out. That should have been my first red flag. Oh, wait. Second red flag. In month 2, Nathan stopped paying utilities entirely. When the power got shut off, he shrugged and said, "Figure it out. Since everything was in my name, I had to pay $300 to get it turned back on, plus late fees. Then I started noticing my food disappearing, and this wasn't just snacks. I'm talking about entire meals I'd prepared for the week. When I confronted him, he said, "Prove it was me," with this smirk that made my blood boil so much that I wanted to smack his face to wipe it off. The final straw was when I came home from work to find the apartment reeking of weed, 3 strangers passed out on my couch, and my bedroom door wide open. My laptop was gone, and Nathan claimed he had no idea what happened to it. I had to spend $800. I didn't have to buy a replacement laptop for work. But Nathan wasn't done terrorizing me. I started finding evidence that he'd been going through my stuff when I wasn't home. My dresser drawers were never quite how I left them. I found my mail opened and poorly resealed. One day I came home to find him sitting on my bed, going through my laptop bag. When I confronted him, he just smirked and said, "I was looking for my charger." If Audacity was a person, it'd be him. When I threatened to call the police about the laptop, Nathan got in my face and said, "You really don't want to make me your enemy. I know where you work, where you sleep, and I have friends you don't want to meet." Over the next few days, Nathan escalated his acts of terror. My boss called me into his office after someone claiming to be a concerned neighbor reported drug activity at my address and questioned my character. I almost lost my job. When I confronted Nathan, he just said, "Prove it was me," with that sick smile. Then he started accidentally breaking my things. My coffee maker slipped out of his hands. My favorite mug got knocked over. My TV remote mysteriously stopped working after he borrowed it. Each time, he'd offer fake apologies and refuse to replace anything. The final escalation came when I found my cat hiding under the couch, shaking, with a small cut on her ear. When I asked Nathan about it, he smiled and said, "Cats can be so clumsy, can't they?" That's when I knew this psycho was genuinely dangerous. That night, I lay awake, realizing I was trapped. The lease had both our names on it. Eviction would take months and cost thousands in legal fees I didn't have, and Nathan had made it clear he wasn't going anywhere. But Nathan made one crucial mistake. He underestimated me. See, I work in digital marketing, which means I'm pretty good at research, documentation, and, let's call it, creative problem solving. I started by documenting every mess he left, every unpaid bill, every threat, and I photographed it all with timestamps. I started recording our conversations on my phone. After the laptop incident, I told Nathan I was installing a security camera in the living room for protection. He just laughed and said, "Whatever makes you feel safer, princess," clearly not thinking it would ever matter. I made sure the footage was backed up in several places for insurance. Then I got creative. First, I started with tackling the money situation. Nathan owed me nearly $800 in utilities and bills by this point. I couldn't force him to pay, but I could make his life inconvenient. I called our internet provider and downgraded our plan to the absolute cheapest option that was barely enough for one person to check email. When Nathan complained that his gaming was lagging, I told him he was welcome to upgrade the plan if he wanted to pay for it. Suddenly, he couldn't stream, couldn't game online, couldn't do whatever shady business he was doing on his laptop. Next, I hit him where it hurt, his social life. Nathan was one of those guys who acted tough but cared a lot about his image. He'd bring different girls over constantly, always trying to impress them by acting like he was some big shot who owned this lovely apartment. I started being strategically honest with his guests. When he'd bring a girl over and introduce himself as living downtown in this sweet place, I'd casually mention things like, "Oh, hey, did you want to chip in for utilities this month? You're about $800 behind." Or, "Just so you know, the bedroom walls are super thin here so I can hear literally everything." You'd be amazed at how quickly someone's interest dies when they realize the guy they're with is a deadbeat who hasn't paid bills in months. But the real genius move was exploiting Nathan's paranoia. One thing is that guys like him are usually up to no good, which means they're always worried about getting caught. I started leaving printed copies of tenant rights laws on the kitchen counter, articles about how to document roommate harassment for legal action. I'd even have fake phone conversations near his room about consulting with a lawyer about the roommate situation. Then I got even more creative. I started having my friend Jake call the apartment, asking for Detective Morrison, and saying things like, "We have some follow-up questions about the laptop theft report." Nathan would panic every time, asking me what that was about. I'd just shrug and say, "Oh, insurance stuff. They need to investigate all theft claims." The beauty of it was that I wasn't actually doing anything illegal, but Nathan's guilty conscience was doing all the work for me. Remember how I mentioned Nathan cared about his image? Well, turns out he'd been telling everyone he was some successful tech sales guy when he wasn't. Plus, let's not forget, that was the lie that made me accept him as my roommate. In reality, I discovered he was basically a small-time drug dealer who'd been using our apartment as his base of operations. I started documenting his business meetings, taking photos of license plates when his shady friends came over, and noting the times and dates. I didn't plan to turn him into the police, but I wanted him to know I was watching. Then I did something that probably sounds petty, but it was devastating to someone like Nathan. I created a fake dating profile using his photos and listed all his actual qualities. Doesn't pay bills, lives off roommate, brings random people over at all hours, questionable employment. Within a week, every girl in our area who used dating apps knew exactly who Nathan was and what kind of person he was. And those who weren't using dating apps got words from their friends. It was fulfilling seeing his dating life completely dry up. The end came faster than I expected. Nathan had been getting increasingly paranoid about all my documentation and the mysterious phone calls. He was convinced I was building a legal case against him. One night he came home drunk and started screaming at me, saying he was done with my games and that I needed to stop whatever I was planning or else. He grabbed me by the shirt and shoved me against the wall. Boy, that was a big mistake because I finally had him where I wanted. If you recall, I had cameras running by this point, and now I had him on video committing assault. I didn't even have to threaten him with it. I just calmly said while pointing towards the camera, "Nathan, you should probably take a look at that security camera I told you about when I installed it. The one you said was fine because it would make me feel safer. Think very carefully about what you just did and what's been recorded." The color drained from his face. He knew he was caught. Nathan stood there for a full minute, just staring at the camera, realizing what he'd done. You could see his brain processing that he'd just committed assault on video in an apartment where he'd been dealing drugs with a roommate who'd been documenting everything for months. You can't use that," he stammered. "That's illegal recording." I pulled out my phone and showed him the lease agreement. "Actually, it's common areas of my own apartment, and I have every right to record for security purposes after losing my laptop, plus you consented to me installing it." That's when Nathan realized he was completely screwed. Not only did I have him on assault, but I also had months of evidence of his drug dealing, theft, harassment, and intimidation. His whole tough guy act crumbled instantly. "Look," I said, "here's what's gonna happen. You have 48 hours to pack your stuff and get out. You're going to pay me the $800 you owe in utilities, plus another $500 for my stolen laptop, plus $200 for the security deposit cleaning fee. I don't have $1,500, he protested. Then you better figure it out fast, because in 48 hours, all of this footage goes to the police, your parole officer. How did you know about my parole officer? I smiled. Nathan, I told you I'm good at research. Did you really think I wouldn't run a background check on someone living in my apartment? Assault with a deadly weapon, drug possession with intent to distribute. You're one violation away from going back to prison. The look of pure terror on his face was worth every sleepless night he'd put me through. For the next 2 days, Nathan was a completely different person. Gone was the cocky, threatening roommate. He was making frantic phone calls, begging friends and family for money. He started selling his stuff, like his gaming setup, his sound system, and even his car. He kept asking me to be reasonable and accept partial payment. I told him the price went up $100 every day he was still here after the deadline. The funniest part was watching him try to explain to people why he needed money so urgently without admitting what he'd done. I heard him on the phone telling his mom he had a business opportunity that required immediate cash. On day 2, Nathan came to me with an envelope of cash. It's $1,200, he said. That's all I could get. The price is now $1,700, I replied. You missed the deadline. He started getting angry again, then caught himself remembering the cameras. Please, man, I'm leaving tonight. Just take the $1,200. Nathan, you seem to think this is a negotiation. It's not. You terrorized me for months, stole from me, threatened me, and assaulted me. The only reason you're not in handcuffs right now is because I'm giving you a chance to make this right. But that chance expires at midnight. I watched him call his mum again, practically in tears, begging for another $500. At 11:47 p.m., Nathan knocked on my door with $1,700 in cash. His hands were shaking as he handed it over. There, he said. Now delete everything. Oh, Nathan, I laughed. I'm not deleting anything. This stays backed up in multiple locations as insurance. If you ever contact me again, if you ever come back here, if you ever even think about retaliating, all of this goes straight to the police. Understood? He nodded like a broken man. By 2 a.m., he was gone. Not just moved out, but gone. He loaded everything he owned into a friend's pickup truck and disappeared into the night like some kind of criminal fleeing town. The next morning, I woke up to the most beautiful sound I'd heard in months. Silence. There was no loud music, no random people, no threats, no drama. Just peace. I found out later from a mutual acquaintance that Nathan had left the state. Apparently, he told people he got a job opportunity in another city, but honestly, I think he was just too scared to stay anywhere near me. The $1,700 covered everything he owed me, plus enough extra to take a vacation to celebrate my newfound freedom. I kept the security cameras running for a few more months just in case, but Nathan never returned. 6 months later, I got a new roommate. She was a quiet nursing student who paid her bills on time, cleaned up after herself, and had never once threatened to kill my cat. Oh yeah, this time, I ran a background check on her. There was no way I wanted Nathan 2.0 in my apartment. Sometimes I wonder what Nathan is doing now. Is he terrorizing some new roommate in another state? Has he learned his lesson? Honestly, I don't care. All I know is that he must have learned not to mess with me. And the best part was that everything I did was completely legal. I never broke a single law. I just used his own paranoia, his own criminal behavior, and his own poor choices against him. More like serving him his own medicine. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. It's just being better at the game than they are. If you enjoyed listening to my story, please like this video and turn on that notification bell so you'll know when I update. Oh, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button. See you next time.